What do you think? Saturday night live on 76 Research. Rob, my friend, it's good to see you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I saw a few of you were waiting. That made me super, super happy. I mean, because we have so much to discuss. Rob, you and I are like on the phone every day going, oh my God, he did this, he did that, he did that. And the biggest thing of all, I think, is really just what's going on from an AI perspective, from a tech perspective, because you know what? I care about this from an investing perspective. I mean, what are we on, day 4? And it's like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a full month with all the executive orders and all the activity, but
it's happening. It's happening, baby. Look at this. I mean, Trump signing in this executive order to put a team into place to look at having an actual crypto fund here for the government. I mean, it's wild.
It is.
Yeah, this is the crypto EO. We're going to be forming an internal working group to make to make America the world capital in crypto under your leadership.
Which is really going up, right?
Absolutely.
Boom! You better believe it's going up. You heard him say, yeah, it's really going up. It's been going up and away. In fact, I think it's one of the sort of giveaways that we were looking at, right? We kind of saw that early on when we were trying to predict, okay, who's going to win this election? And I knew we were watching Polymarket, but we were also watching Bitcoin. We were watching a lot of internals in the market all along because it was suggesting to us that certainly there were a group of people out there that felt very strongly that there was going to be a lot of innovation coming through the pipeline. And you saw that reflected, I think, in the upside of Bitcoin. Just the other day, it hit 109,000. It's off those highs right now, but I mean, we're up over 100. It's pretty amazing.
it is, yeah. And this follows the announcement, I guess it was just earlier in the week, the $500 billion investment in AI data centers, bringing together SoftBank and Oracle and OpenAI. For this huge coordinated investment to expand, America's AI compute capacity. So he's hitting the ground running, and as promised, making sure America, stays or extends its leadership.
Extends its leadership. I mean, I think it's so important, right? Because there were so many people, dare I say, on the other side, right? The left was so anti-tech investment. And it's like, okay, guys, if we don't do this, like somebody else will, right? And I kind of look at it as just a critical part of the next sort of leg in our growth and our opportunity. And I'm not alone. I mean, obviously you look at the guys that were seated with him and you saw Zuckerberg, you saw Jeff Bezos, you saw Elon Musk, obviously. Everybody's very concerned about making sure America still is first and foremost on the tech front. Of course, the tech CEOs. And so they have, I mean, it's amazing, right? They've done this like total about face. I was reading an article today about Mark Andreessen, who used to be a Democrat until he realized that the Democrats were actually really holding back innovation in the economy. And just for any viewers out there who are worried about, a digitized dollar, is that what Bitcoin is going to be in these cryptos? No, in fact, it's actually the opposite of that. And one of the executive orders, or as part of the executive order that he signed there, Rob, was to make sure that we never had a digitized dollar where you'd be effectively turning over a heck of a lot of control, right, to the U.S. government and Uncle Sam.
Yep. So that was a key element of the executive order on financial innovation or crypto that was signed, basically forbidding the creation of a central bank digital currency in the U.S., CBDC. That's an issue that a lot of people were very justifiably concerned about because, while you think about money in the modern economy, sure, all of our transactions are digital in the sense credit cards, bank accounts, very, very little of the money supply is actual cash. But if you really kind of tokenize the US dollar, you would potentially empower the federal government to, turn on and off your dollars at will.
Yeah.
So like putting a microchip in your car and preventing you from driving if you wanted to, right? So it was just a level of surveillance that would have been very dangerous.
Yeah, no, for sure dangerous. And we're not entirely out of the woods yet. We're going to get to that in a little bit because I want to talk about XRP and Ripple and some of the concerns around a more controlled as opposed to decentralized kind of crypto technology and blockchain. But before I do, just back to Trump for a moment, because he did something else really big. I want to say within 24 to 48 hours of being in office. And he let a guy out of prison who has been there for 11 years. Ross Ulbricht was the founder of Silk Road, which was sort of the deep dark web, right, back in the day. And Ross was, basically, I would say the first person to really adapt Bitcoin on his website as a method of transaction. And he got in a lot of trouble for that. Like really, 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 really big trouble. I mean, they put him away for life. It was kind of wild. Like the feds were not messing around because all of a sudden he was using this Bitcoin, which back then was trading for, I remember less than $10. He was using Bitcoin as a means of transaction and it wasn't allowed. So he was like the disruptor of all disruptors. And they didn't take too kindly to that. So he wound up going to jail for life, federal prison, and Donald Trump let him out. I just want to show the viewer what he had to say. I mean, he's super thankful, obviously. He's 41 years old. He's been in since he was 29 because he kind of got it before anybody did. I mean, you think about what he was putting in place and the trouble that he wound up in because of it. Let's watch.
Last night, Donald Trump granted me a full pardon. I was doing life without parole, and I was locked up for more than 11 years. But he let me out. I'm a free man now. So let it be known that Donald Trump is a man of his word. Thank you so much, President Trump, for giving me this amazing blessing. I'm so grateful to have my life back, to have my future back, to have this second chance. This is such an important moment for me and for my whole family. It's an important moment for everybody who's been working for this for years. This is a victory, and it's your victory too. And this is an important moment for everybody, everywhere, who loves freedom and who cares about second chances. So it feels amazing to be free, to say the least. It's overwhelming, and for the next however long we need, I'm going to be with my family so that we can reunite and be whole again and heal. But there's a lot to talk about, and I look forward to re-engaging with the free world. And so once I'm feeling up to it, we'll talk again.
That was just such an amazing, I was looking actually in my Rolodex because I have his mom in here, Lynn Ulbricht, and I remember talking to her at length about her son. She came on my show back at Fox, and I had to press her because look, he had a website where they were doing illegal stuff, but at the same time, it's sort of like, it was just nuts that they put him away, right, for that long. He was in some ways kind of almost like I kind of equate it with the founder of Telegram, right? How they were all after the founder of Telegram because he created this amazing technology where people could talk to each other. And yeah, there's not the same kind of accountability. And I get it. Like, that's scary. I think there's like, I don't know, like 100 different Trish Regans all pretending that they're me on Telegram right now. Watch out. Right. And there's nothing I can do about it. I actually went to Telegram. I was like, hey, and they're like, sorry, it's sort of the wild, wild west. And he was part of that wild, wild west early on. But what scared the heck out of the feds at the time was that he was using or allowing Bitcoin as the tender that was going back and forth. It just seemed like the crime didn't really fit the punishment because he's one of those disruptors that in, I think, a Donald Trump world, you do want to try and cultivate and help along because they're going to help propel us, right, as a society and as an economy to the next stage. If you shut down everybody who's got a good idea on how to do things differently rather than working with them, then you never make it. You never make it beyond sort of this little, box that Kamala Harris, forgive me, wants to live in.
Yeah, that was quite a moving statement. I think Jude Law could play him in the movie version. It'll be good. But I think you're right. I mean, he was hit very hard, and the in the eyes of many very excessive. But really, they weren't so much punishing him; they were kind of shutting down decentralized finance, right? And that's why he became such a poster child for the Bitcoin movement. I think Trump, in a very politically astute way, saw the symbolism in, commuting his sentence or pardoning him. And it sort of is an extension of how Trump has engaged the Bitcoin community, the libertarian community, the younger demographic. And that's just a big aspect of what's going on with the whole crypto push right now. And by the way, I think there's a pretty strong argument to be made that the younger generation is what got him won him the election, and crypto and digital freedom was a big element of that.
Look, and everybody's catching on. Everybody's catching on. You look at how Bitcoin's gone through the roof in the last year alone. Even really, I mean, I want to say, since you and I were I introduced Michael Saylor at a Bitcoin conference actually in New York, and when was that? Late September, Rob? And I remember you being at the conference as well, and he just had an amazing presentation. And by the way, here on the 76 Research channel, as well as on the Trish Regan channel, you can watch my entire interview. It's probably about an hour with Michael Saylor, and he's just, absolutely fascinating, and really has been at the forefront of this, coming to it in August of 2020 when he was like, wait a second, where do I put my assets, right? Where am I going to put my assets for this company that I have, MSTR? And he came to the conclusion that the best opportunity for growth really was Bitcoin. And he's done some amazing things within the financial tech space and the financial engineering space, in that he's creating all these derivative products, et cetera. But before I kind of go too far or too deep into that, I want to point out that Wall Street now is on board. So 11 years ago, this kid, Ulbricht, gets sent to prison forever. Life in prison. Another guy I knew, I used to do a lot of interviews with Charlie Shrem. He was 23 years old. He got sent to prison because he had created a way for people to send Bitcoin via Western Union, believe it or not. And he was actually taking Bitcoin at his nightclub in New York City. And this was no-go territory. They didn't put him in for life. They put him in for a few years. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? I mean, they were terrified at this. And now you fast forward to where we are. And I want to show everybody Larry Fink. Larry Fink, head of BlackRock, at Davos this week, had some pretty optimistic things to say. Of course, he's making a killing on Bitcoin with his Bitcoin fund. Let's watch it.
If you're frightened of your debasement of your currency, or you're frightened of your economic or political stability of your country, you could have an internationally based instrument called Bitcoin that will overcome those local fears. And so I'm a big believer in the utilization of that as an instrument. And so if that becomes true, and you see that it could be a proper hedge against maybe hope security or equities. The question is, could you see a 2 or 5% allocation? I was with a sovereign wealth fund during this week, and that was the conversation. Should we have a 2% allocation? Should we have a 5% allocation? If everybody adopted that conversation, but it would be 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 per Bitcoin.
But does it also?
I'm not promoting it, by the way. So that is not my promotion.
Well, look, he's promoting it in one way or another, but that's a pretty optimistic scenario from Larry Fink. But again, he's got IBIT, which is basically an ETF in Bitcoin. I mean, there's a few of them out there. His fees are a little higher than, say, Grayscale, but there's a lot of ETFs now in Bitcoin. You couldn't do this 11 years ago, you had to have a hard wallet, right? Coinbase, I don't think existed 11 years ago when Ross got sent to the slammer for life by the feds. So much has changed. And this adaptation from Wall Street, you know what? A lot of people like that are diehard Bitcoin folks, they're like, oh my God, I don't want Wall Street in there. But I'm like, you know what? I like it because it's actually showing this adaptation model, meaning it's here to stay, Rob. And that's important.
Yeah, and maybe let's just take a step back and think about what BlackRock has done. I mean, it's been just about a year actually since these ETFs got approval. Larry Fink's ETF is the largest Bitcoin ETF. I was just checking; it has more than 150 billion of assets. That's a very large fund. Yeah. So even with a 25 basis point, kind of fee, that BlackRock's making a lot of money off that. And by the way, they're just getting started, right? The flows continue to come in. And as the beauty of the asset management industry is, as Bitcoin goes up in value, the fee goes up just on the total value of the assets. So that franchise, that IBIT franchise just for them is already immensely valuable. I thought it was interesting too. We kind of talked about 2 to 5 historically have talked about Bitcoin allocations being 1 to 3%. Now it's kind of drifting up to 2 to 5. Maybe the next stop is, 3 to 7, who knows? But no, clearly he is promoting it. He has a lot, it's a major investment for BlackRock. And I think he's actually onto something. It's a supply constrained, decentralized form of money that basically anyone in the world with access to a computer can participate in. And, like just to kind of follow through on his math, Bitcoin is a 2 trillion asset class right now, representing something like 0.1% of total global financial assets. So what he's saying is, okay, if everyone increases their allocation, whether it's sovereign funds or governments or private corporations, private individuals, this network's getting monetized and capitalized. And that's how we get to 500,000, 600,000, 700,000, a million. And it's all quite realistic.
Yeah, we'll get to this in a little bit, but I think it's important for people to understand, like, there's a difference between, say, Bitcoin and a meme coin, right? Like this is the blockchain technology that's so important and part of the future. And there's other versions of this, and we can talk about XRP, which is getting a lot of criticism right now. We can talk about Solana, we can talk about Ethereum, but all of these are the actual technologies and the blockchains themselves, which are very different than, say, some of the memes that get traded on them. And I want to make that sort of point clear, because some people are like, oh, I don't understand this. And then you see these meme coins that are going all over the place. And granted, there's volatility, don't get me wrong, in the crypto blockchains as well, whether it be Solana, whether it be the biggest of them all, Bitcoin or Ethereum, but it's a little different than the memes. I also want to just say, Rob, this adaptation from Wall Street, you see it, say, on the asset management side. And by the way, our friend Vivek Ramaswamy over at Strive Asset Management, they're coming up with some innovative products, and he's actually pushing his state of Ohio to also back Bitcoin in different ways. But not everybody's on board, right? And there's a difference between maybe the banks, the financial institutions, and the asset managers themselves. When I say not everyone's on board, I think about what Jamie Dimon told CBS News this past weekend. Let's take a listen to this, because he was a little critical there. I believe he's equating Bitcoin to a pet rock. Watch.
You've said that it's as useless as a pet rock. What do you really think?
You're going to have some kind of digital currency at one point. So I'm not against crypto. Bitcoin itself has no intrinsic value. It's used heavily by sex traffickers, money launderers, ransomware. So I just don't feel great about Bitcoin. I applaud your ability to want to buy or sell it. Just like I think you have the right to smoke, but I don't think you should smoke.
Since he...
Is there, dare I say, an incentive for JP Morgan's CEO to be kind of hesitant on Bitcoin and other cryptos?
Yes, there is. I mean, he's the basically runs the largest bank in the United States, and he's the defender of the old system and the traditional financial system. And very clearly, he views Bitcoin as a threat to traditional banking and to JP Morgan and to all the different ways that JP Morgan makes money through credit card lending and transactions and all of these areas of banking that are likely to be disrupted by technologies that build off of Bitcoin. I think it's getting a little bit, a few years ago when he talked about pet rock or just money laundering, this and that, it's like, it feels like it's getting a little tired. We're at 2 trillion. We're at there's no intrinsic value. There's $2 trillion, 16 years later, there's $2 trillion of market value associated with, this digital form of money called Bitcoin. And, we can still have the debate about, but okay, it's just ones and zeros. There's nothing backing the US dollar either. It's also a convention, a shared belief. But the Bitcoin network is working, and I think it's a little bit. I mean, he's obviously defending his position, but it's just getting a little stale because, if anything, the direction of travel is clearly for this network to continue to grow and attract more capital.
And you know what I'm amazed by? Trump gets that. Trump gets that, and he's an older guy, right? So you could say, oh, it's generational, but and unfortunately, the viewers that are watching CBS News tend to be kind of the camp where they don't understand Bitcoin either. And like, I get it. I mean, I hear from a lot of viewers here, and I'm just like, you know what? I told my mom, like, she's a great example. Maybe back in September, I'm like, Mom, like, you really, I don't understand Bitcoin. I don't know what it is. And I'm like, just trust me. Cause like the financial system is getting disrupted here. And there's going to come a day when all the kinds of things that exist, say on the New York Stock Exchange, are not going to exist because you're going to be able to do all of this electronically, all via blockchain. And so when I look at, say, maybe some of those memes that, I don't love the memes, I think to myself, what if those were stocks that were being traded on these blockchains? Like, what if the blockchains became like the exchanges, or, as you and I have talked about, for example, I'll use Ethereum as one sort of case study. Ethereum, where you don't need all the lawyers, you don't need, when it comes to derivative products, you can basically write everything into the code. So everything happens instantaneously, cheaply, boom, it's there. You don't need the JP Morgans with the whole sort of stale financial system that they've built up to exist, not unless they're willing to, I guess, keep pace with things. I kind of look at another one of Larry Fink's ventures, which is the Texas Stock Exchange, and Texas being kind of a disruptor in and of itself, just the state alone, right? Don't mess with Texas, might have a real opportunity there if they're willing to adapt some of these new technologies and take us forward. U.S. is the financial capital of the world. We want to continue being the financial capital of the world, but I think part of that means changing. And I think, it's natural, right? Like a JP Morgan is going to resist that.
Yeah. I mean, this is disruptive technology. Larry Fink, he gets, because of his foray into ESG, I think he's perceived.
He's been vilified. The DEI and the ESG. I don't think he'll ever live that down, even though he wrote a letter saying, it's over. It's done.
Yeah. No, he earned that badge of dishonor. I think in terms of, to your point, I mean, he's not a banker, right? He doesn't represent the banking system. He just manages money. And so he's aligning himself with trends in, where asset values are headed. So he's going to get through the crypto ETFs, he's going to get kind of a slice of the growth of that sector. He doesn't really care about what happens to traditional banking. That's not, they both kind of seem to represent old Wall Street, but actually, there's a nuance there. And Fink is on the side of decentralized finance, and because he knows that's where the world is headed, right? Yep. I mean, he's not going to hitch his wagon to the past. So
take a look at some of these. We just before we came to air, we were taking a look. This is a board from Coinbase, and Bitcoin up at 104, Ethereum. You know what's amazing about this too? Unlike the traditional stock market, which closes at 4:00 on Friday and won't open again until 9:30 on Monday morning. Guess what? You can trade this stuff like all day long, right? You can all night long. It's actually really addictive. I don't encourage people to be looking at this late at night on a Saturday night, but nonetheless, this is what you and I were doing right before we came to air. And so you look at some of these big players, XRP. I want to talk to you a little bit about XRP, but before we do, just, there's a lot of different ones out there, right? And you can build kind of a basket. That's what I've done sort of independently on my own. And so I have a few like Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP as a hedge, Solana. I have Tau. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But these are, it's just a way to kind of get exposure, I guess, to a broader array of things.
Yeah, I guess I'll share my own kind of personal way of kind of breaking down the crypto universe from my own investment standpoint. So Bitcoin is about crypto universe, and it's the original token, the original crypto investment. To me, it's in a class by itself. Bitcoin is a form of money. It's digital capital. Its only use case is to be money. Mm-hmm. It's supply constrained, and I think it has. I'm very optimistic about where it's headed. Its ability to kind of in on gold's market cap, which is still 10 times larger than Bitcoin's market cap. So I personally have a pretty meaningful allocation to Bitcoin, mm-hmm. Both through ETFs and directly. Mm-hmm. Now these other tokens that you've mentioned, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, we see those are the next biggest ones, mm-hmm. and those represent technologies. Mm-hmm. They are crypto technologies, kind of like what Jamie Dimon was referring to. So these are technological tools that enable improvements in the financial system and have all kinds of other potential applications. And so their value kind of derives from their utility as technological tools. Mm-hmm. And then you have that third basket, which we referred to earlier, which were kind of meme coins, which don't necessarily do anything. They're more like collectibles. And they're speculative assets.
It's like stickers. It reminds me of when I was a kid, I had a sticker collection. And they're like stickers, but the stickers had no value. I guess they had value to us kids, but the reality is when you look at something like Bitcoin, Ethereum, you're talking about real technology that's behind this stuff. So it's a different prospect.
But what Jamie Dimon wants you to think is that the meme coins and the pet rocks and the beanie babies, and the stickers are the same thing as Bitcoin, and the same thing as some of these other, technology-based initiatives, and they're not. And I think investors should be mindful that, just as when you look at the stock market and you see Microsoft, you're not comparing it to GameStop, and you're not comparing it to some penny stock seems to be a fraud, right? They're all stocks, but they're very different animals.
It's a good point. When I'm looking at this chart, the market caps overall on some of these cryptos are pretty extraordinary. Bitcoin leading the way, number 2 being Ethereum, XRP is the third. Give me a sense of just how much money is in there.
Yep. So I checked. 2.1 trillion is Bitcoin's market cap. So that's the total number of Bitcoin's out there times the current price. Mm-hmm. And then Ethereum is the number 2 at 400 billion of total value, mm-hmm. which is considerable. That would put it up there as one of the larger stocks on S&P 500. Solana, XRP about 180 billion, and Solana about 125 billion, and then it starts to fall off. So those are the big. I think the next one's like 50 billion. So, those are the big 4. And then you have many others down the list.
I want to get to a couple of the questions because our friend Peace of My Mind is here tonight. Thank you, Peace of My Mind, for tuning in and catching the live. Way to go. And he's got some really good questions. And one of them is, can you buy things with Bitcoin? or do you need to exchange Bitcoin dollars to be able to purchase things? And you and I were talking about this recently because I know that you've also had a foray into stablecoins, et cetera. And we're not at the point right now where you're like transacting in Bitcoin. You're still, if you're in a Coinbase wallet, at least this is how I do it, right? I have my Bitcoin in, say, IBIT or BTC, which are ETFs, and that's what you trade on the exchange. And then you can have a Coinbase account, or I also have some Tau in a Kraken account. We can talk about that, but like those, you would typically want to, you could trade them for other things there and maybe, buy and sell within the app. But with Bitcoin, what I would do, and I don't sell it, but if I were to sell it, I'd sell it and then transfer it back into my bank account for actual dollars. So are we going to get to the point, probably, not with Bitcoin, but he's asking also, is there like a Bitcoin credit card that people could use to make purchases? I think, at this stage, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just sort of like, okay, this is a place to store money, but it's not actually money.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's like a store of value.
Bitcoin, for people who, are willing to receive Bitcoin, Bitcoin is used as money, but I would say that's not going to be the future of Bitcoin. The Bitcoin network actually doesn't lend itself to a high volume of small transactions because of all the energy and computational resources that go into verifying the transactions. So it's not going to replace credit card transactions. However, they have what's called technologies which utilize Bitcoin and sort of build on the network that will enable smaller, more frequent transactions. Mm-hmm. But I would say the idea with Bitcoin more, just as you wouldn't use gold to buy a cup of coffee or your stake in gold, Bitcoin is going to be more for storage of capital, but can definitely be modified. And
wouldn't you see though the credit card companies? It's actually an interesting way to think about. I look at credit card companies as an interesting way to play inflation. And also perhaps a way to play cryptos, because a lot of them, I think, are recognizing that this is the future, right? Because, boy, did I get mad. A couple years ago, I was traveling overseas, or maybe a year and a half ago, I was in Ireland again. And I'm like, what? I got hit with an international transaction fee on my credit card. And it turned out I just needed a different credit card, a better credit card that wasn't going to do that, because you shouldn't be charging that nowadays because of the ease of which, but it's just going to get easier and easier and easier and easier, I think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the credit card companies should be adopting this technology, which, by the way, gets back to what we just saw with Jamie Dimon, is completely scary for the JP Morgans of the world.
Yep. The credit card situation is fascinating. So there's, the credit card industry is sort of controlled by Visa and MasterCard. It's kind of a duopoly. There's also American Express, which is a separate network. When people talk about the disruption to the credit card industry, I think a lot of times they're thinking, okay, Visa and MasterCard are going to be displaced. But you have to understand that those transaction fees mainly go to the banks. Mm-hmm. That Visa and MasterCard are actually very efficient networks that charge something like 15 to 20 basis points on transactions, whereas the bank's taking the 2% from the merchant. Mm-hmm. So the bank most to lose here, and companies like Visa and MasterCard are actually investing very heavily on blockchain technology and adapting their businesses, which are incredible franchises and incredibly valuable franchises, $1 trillion franchises. They're adapting them to be used with Bitcoin or to use the different crypto technologies to move money around more.
Yeah.
So
so it's a way to think about it, right? Because I don't think Visa and MasterCard are going anywhere. They get it. Like Larry Fink, they get it. TCC writing, MicroStrategy, could it be a Bitcoin bank one day? That's kind of an interesting question. I mean, it's the largest holder by far of Bitcoin so far, and it continues to buy Bitcoin. And as Michael has explained, Michael Saylor's never selling the Bitcoin, so they're just amassing it. It's almost like a treasury, if you would, right, of Bitcoin. How do you think about MicroStrategy, MSTR, and what it could potentially be doing?
Yeah. I mean, he describes it himself as a Bitcoin treasury company. To some extent, it almost already is a bank. To some extent, it could become almost like the central bank of the Bitcoin world, just in the sense of, it's a decentralized network. But I mean, given the amount of Bitcoin that company will own, they'll be a very big player. And I think that's a lot of the reason why it trades at that big premium to underlying net asset value, because there's all kinds of innovation that can come from building off that capital base of Bitcoin. And, right now he's selling convertible bonds and selling options, so selling various financial. But the opportunity is to kind of innovate further, utilizing that capital base of Bitcoin, maybe lending activities, mortgages, all kinds of opportunities. So
amazing. I mean, and then I wonder if like stable coins come into play in that arena as well, right? Just given the volatility of Bitcoin. Thoughts?
Well, I think, when we talk about stable coins, I think now we're more in the realm of Ethereum, which I think has about half the market share of the stablecoin market. Where basically the stablecoin business is based on buying U.S. treasuries and then sort of tokenizing them and creating a digital asset, version of U.S. treasuries. And that's
so it's kind of good if you think about it. Some people worry like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to U.S. treasuries if you get all this other, but it's like a win-win.
Yeah. Well, you see Tether right there under XRP. So Tether is the leading stablecoin, coin, and with a very substantial total asset value. And basically, it's like a bank account. It's like a money market fund, and you receive interest as you would if you went to a bank. So what's happening here? You're not going to J.P. Morgan. You're not going to Jamie Dimon to buy his money market fund or to put your money in a savings account. You're going to an exchange, you're buying Tether, you're getting something like a 4 or 4.5% return on it. And this whole thing is operated by, on an Ethereum blockchain, with these private kind of companies.
The world is
eliminating
changing.
The banking system. Yeah.
The world is changing so fast.
Trish, to your point, though, one of the reasons Trump is so keen on advancing this, and this is a point David Sachs has made repeatedly.
By the way, David Sachs, just so everyone knows, crypto czar. He's by the way just a brilliant tech investor, and is coming in. It was one of the PayPal guys, right, originally, and is coming in to run this crypto effort at the White House. Yeah.
So the theory is that this will, tokens like Tether, which can be purchased by basically anyone in the world, and give you a sort of a pass through to U.S. Treasuries. So the more money that goes into Tether, the more U.S. Treasuries have to be purchased. And so the idea is that we're now leveraging the crypto world and sort of the global market opportunity of crypto to bring capital to finance the U.S. government indirecely. And bring down interest rates. And so that's how
we're going to fix the debt situation. Hey, as we look at this screen, right, the third one on there is something called Ripple XRP. And there's a lot of commotion about XRP, a lot of fear that this is sort of the establishment. This is the Kamala Harris version of blockchain. And this is the blockchain like you don't want, because while Bitcoin's decentralized, this is one that actually could have a lot of power over people. I want to go to this guy, Jack Mallers, who's like really, really big in the Bitcoin community and very outspoken advocate for Bitcoin. He like freaked out the other day, like less than 24 hours ago, I guess this was on Friday, saying we're going to have an emergency press conference because this XRP thing is getting really, really scary. They're trying to take over, and this would be really bad. His video got like well over 3 million views within the first 20 hours. Let's take a look and just talk a little bit about what he's getting at. XRP is kind of seen, I guess, as a little bit the devil for many of the folks that are on the Bitcoin side of things.
Okay, emergency press conference. Ripple is undermining American prosperity and freedom. I can confirm Ripple is actively spending millions of dollars trying to undermine a strategic Bitcoin reserve in the United States of America. This is not just an attack on Bitcoin, but on principles of transparency, on fairness, and on our national security. A Bitcoin strategic reserve would be one of the most important economic announcements in American history. I personally would put it on par with Nixon in 1971. However, it would be the first positive economic announcement that comes from the United States in the last 100 years. In 1933, the U.S. made an economic announcement. What was it? We're confiscating your gold. In 1971, the U.S. made an economic announcement. What was it? We're divorcing ourselves from the gold standard. We're divorcing ourselves from being governed by the immutable laws of Mother Nature so that we can debase your money and inflate your life. In 2008, the U.S. made an economic announcement. What was it? It was, we are bailing out and protecting private corporations, banks, and Wall Street at the expense of you, the public. If the U.S. goes on to make an economic announcement that is the support of a Bitcoin strategic reserve, it will not act against its people in the best interest of the public. It will do the opposite. This is a money that is owned, operated, and governed by the people. Governments and corporations own a fraction of this network. Who owns it? Who had first access? The people, the public. This is about being pro-industry, pro-jobs, pro-energy, pro-growth, pro-technology. This is about solving our deficits. This is about leaning into the future and investing in prosperity for generations to come. Equality, inclusion, the leader of the free world, adopting technology that promotes American ideals, a money that we don't control but that we support, that both aids to solve our country's biggest problems and promotes the world we want to see as Americans and its people. Now, Ripple. Ripple is a for-profit company. It prints its own token in XRP, and it is asking the U.S. government to support its monopoly. I ask you this: why should the U.S. government back a privately owned currency? This is corporate lobbying disguised as innovation. This is corporate lobbying disguised as tech growth, jobs, industry. Ripple created all of its currency, issued it to themselves, and relies on the public to buy it. This is not the money for the people. This is not in the best interest of the public. This is in the best interest of a private corporation. This is an economic announcement that would be like 2008, that would be like 1971, that would be like 1933. This is against what this new administration and President Trump stands for. This is against the best interest of the United States of America. It is absurd and ridiculous, and Ripple needs to stand down immediately. Not only are they undermining future prosperity in the United States, benefiting from the technological innovation that is Bitcoin, but they are also trying to take advantage of the situation and benefit themselves. Call your representatives and demand an investigation into Ripple's lobbying efforts. Tweet publicly. Post your comments publicly. I've begun fighting back. I will not stand for this. I am an American. I plan to have children and raise them in America. I will not let Ripple undermine our prosperity, freedom, and benefiting from Bitcoin, a neutral, fair money for the people, for the public. Because this isn't just about Bitcoin versus Ripple. It's about whether the future of money belongs to the people or to private corporations. And it is up to us to decide.
Wow. I actually didn't anticipate playing that entire clip from Jack, but it was so passionate that I felt I had to. So he's making a real distinction there about the money for the people versus the money from a corporation. Walk us through XRP. I know you hold it. I hold a little too because, it's a hedge, I guess. If the Democrats were to get in charge, if Elizabeth Warren has her way, I guess it's going to be all XRP. But walk us through why, Jack, in my estimation, he's got a really good point.
Yeah. That was a great diatribe on his part. And I think it really kind of articulates like what the whole Bitcoin movement is all about, which is, moving towards decentralized money that's not controlled by government or by, in the case of what he's saying about Ripple, a private business, but just money that exists kind of like gold in nature, but a more efficient form of gold, which, takes all of that power and control over our lives away and brings it back to the people. So the contrast is very stark. And, Ripple Ripple Labs, XRP is the token, but, they have been, I think my understanding is they are lobbying people aggressively. They want to be included in the Strategic Digital Assets Reserve, which was actually in that executive order. It was described, I think, as like a digital assets reserve rather than a Bitcoin reserve, which was the original concept, which, opens the possibility that, and they have, by the way, I think 180 days to figure it out. That was what the executive order referenced. So will other tokens, potentially even private, these privately generated tokens like XRP, purchased by the federal government? And there's a big distinction with Bitcoin.
And that feels like a big giveaway, right? To the corporation. Again, when you compare and contrast it with the decentralization of Bitcoin, if you've got one, what's the problem? Walk us through. One corporation having control. Isn't that what we're trying to avoid? Like, we don't want any digital dollars. We don't want anybody having the full control over us.
No one controls Bitcoin, right? It's like a software protocol that's completely decentralized. Some people own more Bitcoin than others, but no one like dominates how it works. It's really decentralized. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. And that's why it's that's why it's taken off, because it solves that problem, because it's really hard to have decentralized money. Meanwhile, XRP, it's a technology that's apparently, has a lot of great uses, but it is controlled by the company that founded it. And they don't own it the way that, you own a business, but they own like something like 35% of the XRP tokens, and they sell it to the public, right? So as the value of XRP goes up, the original creators of XRP are going to profit.
But isn't that how it just, the stock market works? I guess the idea is you don't want that with money, though. Like, I'll go buy the company before rather than have them controlling a portion of the value of the money that we all use.
Yeah, we don't have the U.S. Treasury creating a reserve of private stocks. right? Like that's, and in a sense, that would be the analogy. If the government does start buying, these tokens that are like XRP, it's just, I guess to Jack's point, it's really like the whole idea behind the strategic Bitcoin reserve was to position the U.S. to participate in this neutral global monetary network, and to extend it now to some of these other tokens is, like a complete 180 from the principle of that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have faith in the president and Donald Trump, and I certainly have faith in David Sachs and his abilities and know-how, and we'll see what happens when push comes to shove. But I get it. Like, there's lobbyists at work, and I think they were they were contributors to Kamala's campaign. Right?
Something north of $10 million. But I think they've contributed to Trump. They're acting like
they're playing all sides.
The ethos, but it's the exact opposite ethos of that, kind of freedom and decentralization Bitcoin ethos, right? It's their.
Speaking of which, finish your thought.
No, I mean, they're Ripple technology. I mean, it's even going to be utilized for other governments to create central bank digital currencies for them, which is exactly what all the Bitcoiners and all the libertarians are afraid of. So they're sort of arming the traditional powers of traditional finance with, crypto tools to sort of compete against Bitcoin or to coexist with Bitcoin.
Yeah. With that in mind, I mean, there's so many coins out there, right? There's so many technologies out there, and there's some technologies that maybe people have not heard of as much. One that we have recently come across that I think piqued our interest, so much so that I was like, wait a second, I can't buy it on Coinbase. I got to go open a Kraken account. And I did, is a coin called Tau. And one of the things that I liked about this, and just to be really clear, it's like very small. I think what is the market cap, around 3 billion or so, this is like a tiny little, it's like think of it as a small tech company, right? Compared to some of the big behemoths like an Ethereum or Bitcoin. But what was interesting to me with this, it's the Bittensor network, and you can see where it's trading, and certainly very, very volatile. But this is a network that's designed for people to have AI contributions in a decentralized way. So as we think about having decentralization of money and also tech, AI comes into being too. And right, that's like one of the big concerns right now. Who's going to control AI? And what if you can actually have a decentralized AI platform? That's what the folks that created Bittensor were thinking about. And so this is decentralized, and you're rewarded effectively as an AI creator with the Tau currency, TAO, and that encourages more people to contribute to these AI developments, but in a decentralized way. So it kind of piqued my interest. I know it piqued yours. And what's your thought on this one? Again, it's sort of like a little baby compared to some of the other bigger ones we've been talking about.
Yeah. I mean, that was actually a great explanation. It's about a $3 billion, dollar market cap. So as we were talking about with respect to like Solana, in the neighborhood of 125 billion. There's a lot of potential upside if this takes off. Now, I think we should talk about just in the context of, there are a lot of projects out there within the, space, and this is one of them. And this is one that, we've been looking at and maybe investing a little bit in. It's one that I know, through our network, that a lot of smart, people tied to the venture capital community, the crypto community, think has a lot of real technological merit to it. And it's fascinating. And I think it's just a good way of showing that, there are, it's not just meme coins. There are real technologies that are being developed through the mechanism of these digital assets and cryptocurrencies. So as you said, in this particular case, what they're trying to build is a community that represents a decentralized effort of like pooling AI resources. And you kind of have to purchase the Tau token in order to participate. And then the more you contribute to the system, to that sort of like economy that they're creating the more you get rewarded. And then I guess as Tau rises in value, the more interest people will have in joining that network. So you get these kind of network effects. So it's a very fascinating kind of technological platform or proposition. One thing that I kind of like about it is that it's very much modeled on Bitcoin. So unlike Ripple or XRP, there's no controlling entity. It's very decentralized. They actually use the same sort of schedule that Bitcoin uses in terms of the halving schedule. There's going to be 21 million total coins that are ultimately mined and released through various validation efforts. So it's supply constrained in that sense and really decentralized. So I think it's interesting to talk about as something that has a lot of upside potential, as any kind of early stage coin would. Of course, volatile, a lot of downside risk.
Very volatile. I mean, I've seen it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this one that's like the wildest one I've seen, because just, within the span of a week, it's been up around 600 and something. Now it's like now it's 376. But, it is what these things are. And so it's not for the faint of heart. And I say to people, like, look, when you're investing in some of this, especially when it comes to the lesser known ones, it's really, your Vegas money. Like, you're not going to Vegas this weekend and playing the crap tables. You're choosing to engage in this. And it's sort of like, you want to just leave it and see what happens. So for me, I look at this as a fascinating way to approach AI, because I think one of the things we all worry about, and I'm just looking at the comments in real time here, and John Shippey is saying, I don't trust AI, peace of my mind, making the point centralized versus decentralized. And I get it. Like, a lot of us are very, very nervous about what AI can be. So as we seek solutions here, if you could have a decentralized way to approach it, AI, that is, it feels like that's the right direction to go. So this is in its infancy. Who knows if it'll pan out or not, but it's certainly intellectually, I think, and sort of, I was going to say sort of spiritually, like morally, right, in the right direction, and that you want to decentralize AI if possible.
And I think just from an investment perspective, you kind of mentioned Vegas money. I think, when you're dealing with something like this, highly volatile with a lot of upside, but maybe an elevated risk of total loss, the way you address that is just by sizing your investment appropriately, right? So if you buy an S&P 500 index fund, you can make a much larger investment. Even, only in an extraordinarily catastrophic scenario would you have a complete loss. That's almost unthinkable.
Yeah.
Here, you size your positions accordingly, and because there is so much potential upside, you don't actually have to invest that much to, potentially have an impact on.
It's a really good point. And then, if you lose it, you lose it. Right? It's sort of like, I mean, I'm saying, my husband said to me, Trish, why didn't you buy Bitcoin when it was $10? Because I was talking about it all the time. And, I at that point didn't understand how the whole hard wallet thing worked. But the point just being that, some of these things, if they look really interesting, piece of my mind says, I call it my play money, right? If you have a little bit of play money, just a little bit could go a long way. And, maybe it doesn't, but you see what happens. Go ahead.
I'll just add, worst case scenario, you lose everything, right? You lose 100% of what you invest. Mm-hmm. But by the way, there are a lot of investments out there where, you think, they're safe, but you could actually lose, most of your money or all of your money in the stock market without the kind of potential upside that is available through some of these investments. So, it's a calculated risk, it's risk reward. There's a lot of optionality in the crypto space, and be careful, size your positions accordingly. And with any of these, be prepared for, severe losses of capital, whether temporary or permanent.
Yeah, I'm actually putting up, you see it on the screen, and I'm putting it in the chat, 76research.com. Use code $. You can get our 76 research report there. But the other thing that you guys should be looking at, and we write about crypto a fair amount, but we also write about macroeconomic events and overall markets. And we do have some model portfolios that I want to mention, model portfolios that you can subscribe to where we give you 10 or 15 stocks. And the idea there is, I mean, even in the American Resilience portfolio, which is a growth-oriented portfolio, that's not wild, wild west. I mean, these are companies that we really, Rob and I, have spent a lot of time on looking at, analyzing, and understanding, because these are long-term plays that these are just really, really good American companies. And they're ones that, maybe you wouldn't have thought of, but should over time continue to perform and perform and perform. And that's what we have been seeing. But I'm just going to flag that the model portfolios, there's 3 of them on the website at 76research.com. Right?
Yeah. And we're not, those are more, kind of established cash flow positive, less speculative,
there's an income builder portfolio, for example, that is all designed to, at some point you want to retire and have some income to live off of. And so that's what that is. American Resilience, growth oriented, but again, to your point, very stable. Well, no, I mean, we're not talking about cryptos, but we do talk about cryptos within the newsletter itself, 76 Research. And I have a feeling this week we're going to be talking some more about it, especially as we bring forward more of this content just from tonight's discussion with everyone. But I think it's important to know and to understand, and peace of my mind. Gosh, peace of my mind. Like you're all over this show tonight asking, so is Bitcoin the wild, wild west? I don't think so. It's not in our model portfolios. I think we would do a separate portfolio. Actually, I've been talking to you about that, Rob. Like maybe at some point we come out with the crypto letter. If you sign up for the Founders Club, by the way, you get all 3 portfolios. You get the 76 report, and you get any new portfolios we have coming forward. But peace of my mind is saying, like, is Bitcoin the wild, wild west? And while it is volatile, I don't consider it the Wild West to the extent of some of the others like Solana, even Ethereum, or obviously Bittensor, Tau. Your take? Yeah,
I mean, everyone has to make up their own mind on like what is the long-term risk of Bitcoin. But I think at 2 trillion now in total capitalization, I personally have fairly substantial allocation to Bitcoin in the context of my broader portfolio, still like low single digits, but, a material allocation that I would not have to any of these other coins.
Likewise. In fact, my allocation to Ethereum is minuscule compared to what I am, so likewise, I think we're on the same page on that. And then you get even lower down the food chain with some of these others, because really you're just kind of rolling the dice on those. Yep.
But, even with Bitcoin, I mean, things can go wrong. The future is totally unpredictable. Yes. So you have to be, it's the type of investment that you do have to be prepared for, mentally and financially for, severe downside. But on the other hand,
be severe upside.
Don't fall prey to it. You have to have a balance.
What did Michael Saylor say? What is his prediction? 14 million by when?
Was it, or maybe just 13 million?
13 million. 13
years.
13 is my lucky number. I was born on the 13th. I turned 13 on the 13th, on Friday the 13th. So I was Miss New Hampshire. I was number 13 in the Miss New Hampshire pageant. So I like that Bitcoin's going to 13 million. Anyway, it is good to have. Yeah, Matt, I do like gold as well. I like gold. It's actually that's a good portion of my portfolio as well. But you know what? Gold and Bitcoin are very different, and they're not in competition with one another. That's the one thing. Like, I think it's sort of messed up. Rob, it's like gold or Bitcoin. It's like, I want them both. Thank you very much. I want them both, and I should be able to have them both.
Yeah, look, it's funny. I mean, there's so much banter about, it's gold versus Bitcoin, or Bitcoin versus the other coins. I actually don't. I think, as an investor, I like to have a lot of different shots on the goal and to have diversification and have things that are not correlated. And I do own gold as well. And when you think about let's say things do go south in the crypto universe, and maybe because of a technological reason, whatever. I think gold will be there, kind of waiting, see, as kind of a hedge to kind of take a lot of that capital back. So I kind of see owning gold as is kind of a hedge to owning Bitcoin or other forms of crypto. But in general, they're not necessarily competing. They're just two different types of investments that have their attractive properties as well as their
and they are different, because if they were both sort of these like safe vehicles, okay, the world is ending, what do I want, Bitcoin, gold? Look, I mean, they would trade in tandem, they would trade in a sort of mirror like fashion, and they really, really don't. And I think of one as more of almost like a tech stock, right? And the other as kind of the more blue chip, dare I say. I mean, gold is really something that, gosh, heaven forbid, China decides to invade Taiwan. I said this to you the other day, right? What do you want to own? Gold. I mean, let's hope that doesn't happen. But the gold is there in your portfolio for different reasons, I think, than Bitcoin or any cryptos, because the Bitcoin is a bet on a change in technology, a change in the financial system. That doesn't change how I feel about gold and my need for having that sort of safety, if you would.
Yeah. And a lot of people sometimes criticize Bitcoin because they see how it correlates with the NASDAQ and tech stocks. And they say, see, it's not what it's supposed to be. It's not acting like gold. But I think that's actually sort of more the upside in Bitcoin, is that, yes, this is still an early stage technology or platform, and it's going to have that volatility and sort of correlation with growth assets. But that just signals to you that it still has a lot of runway. I think ultimately, maybe it does start to behave more like gold as it matures and sort of approaches gold's overall capitalization, which is still 10 times larger than Bitcoin.
Maybe, or, Michael Saylor has said, embrace the volatility, right? And there's a lot of reasons to embrace that and accept that. And, some people take advantage of tax implications because of it when it goes down, for example. And I think if you embrace it, you accept that, it's a different vehicle because you're going to have access to it 24/7. It's an open financial market. It is what it is. And I do think of them very differently, and I love them both.
one big happy family in your portfolio.
And I want everything going up and away, which is why I'm really happy that Donald Trump is in there. I am really happy that Scott Bessent is our Treasury Secretary. I am really happy that David Sachs is coming in to run the crypto scene. I think we got a really, really good team.
I agree. And there's a lot to be optimistic about, and there's always risk, but, take a long-term view, be patient, focus on good, be diversified. That's how I approach it.
That's good advice. All right, Rob, thanks. Good to see you here tonight. Thanks to all the viewers for tuning in. We love seeing you. Make sure if you haven't, go over to 76 Research. Use the discount code $. It's just $1 a month for the first 2 months. I know you guys can swing $1, right? You can cancel anytime. So if you don't like it, don't worry about it. No harm, no foul. And we will see you back here very soon.